morning. It's Wednesday, March 9th, and I'm here to tell you this morning that President Biden has opened a can of worms. But that's what presidents are supposed to do. They're supposed to step up there and open cans of worms. And this can of worms that Biden has opened is a call for a Medicare tax hike. Now, Medicare and Social Security are two of the Republicans' least favorite benefits. If it was up to them, they would do away with both of those things. And so, certainly, they are against the call for a Medicare tax. And they twist this whole thing into spending money. Right? Meanwhile, Biden has managed to reduce the national debt by a couple of $1 trillion, I believe, and he plans to reduce it by a couple more $1 trillion. Now, whose fault was it that the debt got out of sight? Well, the 4 years under President Trump, we raised our national debt by a couple of $1 trillion. So the Republicans are taking a position that they did not take over the past 4 years or so. But in any event, I don't want to really talk about that. I'm going to talk about the fact that we do need a tax hike to continue the Medicare situation. And let's face it, one of the reasons that this situation has become dire is because we, the United States, the people in the United States, are living longer. Years ago, you didn't see a lot of people who were in their 80s marching around. Why do you think the retirement age was set at 65 when Social Security started? Because very few people lived past that age. But now many of us are living into our 80s, and that's because of the medical advancements that have taken place in this. But we have to protect our population, our elderly population. If we're going to allow people to live longer, we have to take care of them. And so that calls for a so-called massive tax hike. And it's not really a massive tax hike. It's an additional tax hike on those who make over $400,000. I'm not necessarily in favor of the $400,000 cutoff. I think they could distribute it more evenly. I think they could have different amounts at different levels. So I think everybody needs to pay their fair share into Medicare because it's a benefit for everybody. Not a benefit only for the rich. And I don't want us to be siding against the rich, And $400,000 doesn't really make you very rich these days. So I don't know if I would pick out that particular portion. I tax this thing slightly differently, sort of like a graduated income tax. Because everybody benefits from Medicare. If you make bupkis, you're still entitled to Medicare. So everybody should be contributing something toward it. And maybe one of the things they could do is reduce some of the tax exemption and use that tax money to pay for the Medicare. Because we have 170-something benefits that go to businesses. If we eliminated some of those benefits and used the taxes that you gain by eliminating benefits, how about that? How about doing something like that? Something creative. Meanwhile, this proposal has opened a fierce political battle in Capitol Hill, of course. Years ago, when the Democrats included a 0.9% Medicare tax on earnings and a 3.8% tax on investment income for wealthier individuals in the Affordable Care Act, that sparked a huge controversy. And that was ahead of the 2010 midterm election. And so, based upon something that happened 13 years ago, we're ready to have another intense fight over Medicare's tax plan that was proposed by Biden. And he has proposed other tax hikes in the White House budget, and that's expected to be released tomorrow. So what? So you gotta pay. You gotta pay for the things that are going on in this country. We can't stop paying. We can't stop benefits just because the Republicans don't want to spend any money. They don't believe in spending any money on anything. And Mitch McConnell is thanking heaven because the House is Republican. And they're going to fight any kind of massive taxing. Meanwhile, every chance McConnell gets, he takes federal money and gives it to Kentucky. They get more federal money than any other state. Money that they did not contribute. This is money beyond the taxes that Kentucky gives every every year to the federal government. So McConnell's got a state, and he's sucking the blood of this country to feed his state, but he's against the Medicare tax increase, right? And the other Republican, John Cornyn from Texas, who was an advisor to the Senate GOP leadership, says the answer to everything is to raise taxes, raise taxes. Sure, you got to raise taxes. You got to spend money. You got to get things done. Do we expect to never raise taxes? How come we got so much debt? Is that all the Democrats' fault? I don't think so, because when Obama was president, he lowered the national debt. The national debt rose like a rocket ship under President Trump. Now, Joe Manchin and John Tester, two Democratic centrists, they're up for re-election in the Republican-leaning states next year. And they are stum about the taxing. They're not saying anything because they know in their Republican states they could lose their job. And so Manchin has said he hasn't heard anything about it. He hasn't heard anything about tax. Do you believe that? Do you believe that Manchin doesn't know anything about this tax hike they're planning? I find that hard to believe because he's an on-the-ball guy. He knows what's going on because he's always in a position to take the opposition. So he has to know what's going on. And Tester said, if it's about tax equity, we have to look at it. Everybody has to look at this thing close. If it's about an across-the-board tax increase for everybody, it's probably the wrong time to do it because of inflation. That's what they're touting. Is inflation the government's fault? No. Inflation is the fault of what happened in this country. It's the fault of many corporations taking advantage of situations. It's not the government's fault that we have inflation. It's the result of a pandemic and a lot of other outside factors that are sort of beyond the government's control. So this is going to be a big fight in Congress, and Republicans will use Biden's proposed tax hikes to raise the pressure on Senate Democrats running for re-election in Republican-leaning states, the swing states, Montana, West Virginia, Arizona. So the Republicans are going to take this possible tax hike and use it as ammunition to defeat Democrats in senatorial elections. And that's what our country has come down to. We don't want to take care of our people, but we want to save our positions in other states. Medicare has to be saved. It has to be kept on the books. There's no way around it. The population is aging. So unless you want more people to die, we have to have a tax hike. And I think it should be more evenly distributed. So I leave you with that this morning. Another gloomy picture in the bright sunshine of our republic. Take care. Have a great day.